Claire had never been someone who sought attention. She lived a quiet, unassuming life in a small town, tucked away from the chaos of the world. A simple woman by nature, Claire wasn't interested in the flash or glitz that many others seemed to chase. She was happy with her life, her husband, and the small comforts they had together. One day, Claire decided it was time to buy her first car. She didn't want anything fancy, just something reliable for her everyday needs. She had always relied on public transport, but now that she was thinking about it, owning a car seemed like a good idea. She didn't need a luxury vehicle, just something that would get her to the grocery store, the post office, and her volunteer work. Claire walked into the local car dealership with a calm demeanor. She wasn't dressed in expensive clothing or designer shoes, just a comfortable pair of jeans and a plain t-shirt. She knew exactly what she wanted, and her focus was simple: find a reliable car at a reasonable price. As she entered the showroom, she was immediately greeted by a salesman named Mike. Mike's eyes scanned Claire quickly, assessing her appearance. The modest clothes she wore and the humble aura she carried seemed out of place in a dealership filled with shiny, high-end vehicles. He didn't think much of her at first. She didn't look like the kind of customer who could afford one of the expensive cars on display. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Mike said with a polite smile, though there was a hint of doubt in his voice. "How can I help you today?" "I'm looking for something practical," Claire responded, her voice soft but steady. "I need a car that's reliable and affordable." Mike raised an eyebrow slightly. "Affordable?" he repeated, clearly not expecting such a request in a place filled with luxury models. "Well, we have plenty of high-end vehicles here. But I'm sure you'd like to take a look at our latest models. They're the best on the market right now." Claire shook her head gently. "No, thank you. I'm not looking for anything expensive." Just so the next morning, Claire woke up to the soft sound of birds chirping outside the window. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a peaceful morning, one that Claire had always cherished. There was nothing extraordinary about it, just another quiet day in her life with Andrew. But today, something felt different. The events of the previous day still lingered in her mind. The way she had been treated at the next few days following Claire's visit to the dealership felt like a turning point. She couldn't deny that everything had changed, not just in terms of material things, but in the way she saw herself, and in the way she saw her life with Andrew. There had been so much to process in such a short amount of time, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that none of the changes in her life were really about the luxury car or the wealth Andrew had hidden. It was about the trust, the love, and the deep connection they had built together over the years. As Claire sat in the living room, sipping her tea, she thought about the future. The truth was, she had always known that Andrew was a special man. But now, with the pieces of his life falling into place, she couldn't help but feel both awe and admiration. He hadn't needed the wealth to be the person she had fallen in love with. He had never let it change who he was, and that was something rare, something worth holding on to. Andrew came into the room, his usual calm expression greeting her. He had a way of making everything feel peaceful, even in the midst of chaos. He sat beside her, reaching for her hand. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. Claire nodded. "I'm feeling much better now. It's been a lot to take in, but I think I understand everything now. You didn't keep this from me to deceive me, did you?" Andrew shook his head, his eyes sincere. "No, Claire. I kept it from you because I didn't want you to feel any different about me. I didn't want the wealth or the status to define who I was to you. I wanted us to be just us, nothing more, nothing less." Claire smiled softly. "And that's why I love you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "It's never been about what we have or don't have. It's always been about the life we've built together." Andrew squeezed her hand, and for a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Claire thought about their life, how it had always been simple, how they had shared everything without expectations, and how they had supported each other through every up and down. She realized that it was those things that mattered most, the kindness, the honesty, and the love that had always been there, even when Andrew hadn't revealed everything about himself. Later that week, Claire decided to do something she hadn't done in a long time: go for a walk around the neighborhood. It was one of her favorite things to do, a way to clear her mind and take in the beauty of the world around her. She had always enjoyed the quiet moments, the ones that made her feel connected to the world, and now, with everything that had happened, she felt the need to get out of the house and take a deep breath. As she walked down the familiar street, Claire noticed how everything seemed a little brighter, a little more vibrant than it had before. Maybe it was because she had come to terms with everything that had changed in her life, or maybe it was simply because she had finally realized what truly mattered. It wasn't the car, or the money, or any of the outward things that people often chased after. It was the relationships, the moments shared, and the love that filled her heart. When she returned home, she found Andrew waiting for her, as always, with a warm smile on his face. "How was your walk?" he asked, standing up to greet her. "It was perfect," Claire said, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in days. "It gave me time to think. And I've realized something important." Andrew raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's that?" "I've realized that nothing has changed," Claire said, her voice calm and sure. "We're still the same people we've always been. It's just that now, we have a better understanding of each other. And that's more than enough." Andrew smiled, a look of relief washing over him. "I'm so glad you feel that way. I was worried that this would change things between us." "It hasn't changed anything," Claire reassured him. "If anything, it's only made us stronger. You've always been the person I fell in love with. And that's never going to change." They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable and full of understanding. Claire realized just how lucky she was to have someone like Andrew in her life. It wasn't about the material things, or the luxury cars, or the secrets that had been kept. It was about the love and respect they had for each other, the way they had built their life together, step by step. As the weeks went by, Claire and Andrew settled into their new routine. The Rolls-Royce, though still parked outside, had become just another part of their daily life. It wasn't something they flaunted or showed off. It was simply a symbol of the love and respect they had for each other, a reminder that they didn't need to prove anything to anyone. They were content, and that was enough. Claire continued with her volunteer work, finding joy in helping others, and Andrew focused on his businesses, but always making time for the things that mattered most: his family, his friends, and the simple moments they shared together. Their lives had taken an unexpected turn, but in many ways, Claire felt that they had come full circle. The lesson they had learned was simple but profound: the most important things in life aren't things at all. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, sipping iced tea and watching the sun begin to set, Claire turned to Andrew with a smile. "I think we've figured it out, haven't we?" Andrew looked at her, his eyes full of affection. "I think we have." And with that, they both realized that the wealth, the cars, the lavish gifts, they didn't define them. What mattered was the quiet moments, the love they shared, and the life they had. At ease passed in a blur for Claire. She couldn't stop thinking about the Rolls-Royce, the car parked outside her home, a symbol of Andrew's unexpected confession and the life he had kept hidden from her. The car was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't the car that weighed heavily on her mind. It was everything Andrew had shared. The secret life he had kept from her, the wealth that he had hidden for so long, and the realization that their life together had been far more than what she had ever imagined. At first, Claire had felt a rush of emotions: shock, disbelief, and even a little bit of confusion. She wasn't sure how to react. Andrew, the man she had loved for so long, had kept such an important part of himself from her. But after days of reflection, Claire began to understand. He had kept his wealth hidden not out of deception, but out of love. He hadn't wanted her to love him for his money, but for who he was as a person. Now, Claire knew the truth. Andrew wasn't just her husband, he was a man with influence, power, and wealth far beyond anything she could have imagined. And yet, despite all of that, he had chosen to live a simple life with her, in a quiet home away from the attention and expectations that wealth often brought. She couldn't help but admire him even more for the way he had handled everything, for the way he had stayed grounded despite his success. The morning after the car had been delivered, Claire decided to visit the car dealership. She wasn't sure what she expected, but she knew she needed to face the people who had treated her so unfairly. She had been dismissed so easily, judged so quickly based on nothing more than her appearance. Claire wasn't looking for an apology, but she wanted them to understand that they had misjudged her, that they had been wrong to treat her like she didn't matter. When she arrived at the dealership, the first thing she noticed was how empty it seemed. The showroom was quiet, almost too quiet. The shiny cars were neatly arranged, but there was no hustle, no bustle, nothing to suggest that it was a busy, thriving place. As she walked inside, Claire was greeted by a different salesman this time. This one was polite, but there was a nervousness in his eyes, as if he wasn't sure how to approach her. "Good morning, ma'am," the salesman said. "How can I help you today?" Claire took a deep breath, steadying herself before she spoke. "I'm not here to buy a car," she said calmly. "But I would like to speak with the manager." The salesman nodded quickly, though it was clear he was a bit confused. "Of course, ma'am. Right away." A few moments later, the manager, a middle-aged man with a neatly pressed suit, approached her. He recognized Claire immediately. His face went pale when he saw her standing there, and Claire couldn't help but notice the way his expression shifted. He knew who she was. He had heard the story. "Mrs. Pierce," he said, his voice polite but cautious. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened the other day. It was completely inappropriate, and I assure you that it won't happen again." Claire smiled softly, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm not here for an apology," she said. "I'm here because I want you to understand that judging people based on appearances is wrong. You treated me as if I was unworthy of being here, and you made assumptions that couldn't have been further from the truth. I'm not asking for sympathy, but I do want you to know that what you did hurt." The manager looked down at his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand, Mrs. Pierce. We should never have treated you that way. And I truly regret what happened. We have a responsibility to treat every customer with respect, no matter who they are or how they look." Claire nodded, satisfied with his words, though she knew they didn't change what had happened. "I hope you'll remember this lesson going forward," she said. "Not everyone who walks into your dealership is trying to buy the most expensive car. Some people just need something practical, something that works for them." As Claire turned to leave, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't looking for vindication, but it felt good to have her voice heard, to stand up for herself in a way that she had never done before. It was a small victory, but it was important. She had always been the type to avoid conflict, to shy away from confrontation. But today, she had stood up for herself, and it felt empowering. When she returned home, Andrew was waiting for her in the living room, the soft hum of the air conditioning filling the silence between them. He looked up when she entered, his eyes warm but filled with concern. "How did it go?" he asked, standing up from the couch. "I told them what happened," Claire said, sitting down beside him. "I let them know how wrong they were, and I think they understood. It wasn't about the apology, I just wanted them to know that people shouldn't be judged based on how they look." Andrew nodded, his expression proud. "I'm proud of you, Claire. You're strong, and you handled it with grace." Claire smiled at him, feeling the weight of the past few days lift from her shoulders. "I'm glad you think so. But there's something else I need to talk to you about." Andrew looked at her with curiosity. "What's on your mind?" Claire paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you told me, the wealth, the life you've built, the things you've kept hidden. I understand why you did it, Andrew. I do. But I need you to know that none of that matters to me. I don't love you because of your money or your success. I love you because of who you are. Andrew smiled, his eyes softening with relief. I never wanted you to love me for anything other than who I am. You're the most important thing in my life, Claire. You always have been. As they sat there together, Claire realized that her life had just changed in ways she hadn't expected. The Rolls-Royce was a symbol of Andrew's love for her, but more than that, it was a symbol of everything they had built together, a life full of love, trust, and understanding. They didn't need wealth or luxury to make their relationship strong. What they had was more valuable than anything money could buy. And for the first time in a long while, Claire felt truly at peace. The car dealership, the judgment, the condescension, it was hard to shake off. She got out of bed and stretched, trying to push the frustration aside. As she walked downstairs, she found Andrew in the kitchen, making coffee. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting start to the day. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, love," Andrew greeted her with his usual calm warmth. "Morning," Claire replied, forcing a smile. "I've been thinking about yesterday." Andrew looked at her with understanding, his eyes kind and patient. He had always been someone who listened without judgment, someone who understood her without needing many words. "What's on your mind?" he asked softly. "I can't stop thinking about how I was treated at the dealership," Claire admitted. It doesn't sit right with me. I was just trying to buy a car, but I felt so dismissed. Like I didn't matter." Andrew's expression softened. He set the coffee pot down and walked over to her, taking her hand in his. "I know, Claire. I heard about it. I'm sorry you had to go through that. No one should ever treat you like that." Claire met his gaze, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. She knew Andrew would never intentionally let her down. But there was something about his tone that felt different this time. There was a certain depth to his words, something that made her wonder if there was more to the story than she had realized. "Andrew," Claire began, her voice quieter now, "why do you keep saying that? Why do you always act like you're the one who's sorry for everything? You didn't make that man treat me like that. It wasn't your fault." Andrew looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the window and looked out at the calm street outside. There was a pause, a silence that felt almost heavy. Finally, he spoke. "I know it wasn't my fault, Claire. But there's something you don't know about me, something I've kept from you. It's something I've never wanted to share because I don't think it matters. But maybe now is the time." Claire was taken aback. She wasn't expecting this. Andrew had always been so open with her about everything, and yet there was something about him, something hidden that she had never fully understood. She walked over to him, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice gentle. "What is it that you've been hiding?" Andrew turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers. He took a deep breath before he spoke again. "I haven't always lived the life you think I have," he began, his voice steady but with a trace of something Claire couldn't quite place. "I've kept things from you, Claire, not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I never wanted you to see me as anything other than the man you fell in love with." Claire's heart began to race as she listened. There was something in his voice that suggested this wasn't just about money or wealth, it was deeper than that. She had always known Andrew as a kind, humble man. But now, it seemed there was more to his story than she had ever imagined. "What are you trying to say?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew looked down at his hands for a moment before looking back at her. "I'm not just a simple man, Claire. I'm not just someone who works a 9-to-5 job or lives in a small house. I've built a life that's beyond anything most people could ever imagine. I'm not just an ordinary man, I'm someone who has made millions, someone whose wealth is beyond what you can fathom. Claire stood frozen for a moment, trying to process his words. "You're a billionaire?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "But I never knew. You never told me." Andrew nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and understanding. "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't think it mattered. I didn't want you to love me for my money, Claire. I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have." Claire's mind was spinning. She had always known Andrew as the kindest, most grounded man she had ever met. She had never once suspected that he was hiding such a huge part of his life from her. But now, the pieces were starting to fall into place. The quiet lifestyle they led, the way he avoided the spotlight, everything suddenly made sense. "You could have told me," Claire said softly, still trying to come to terms with what she was hearing. "You didn't have to hide this from me." Andrew walked over to her and gently took her hand. "I know, Claire. I know now that I should have. But I didn't want to complicate things. I wanted us to be happy without worrying about money or status. But I see now that keeping this from you wasn't the right thing to do." Claire stood there in silence, her thoughts racing. She didn't know how to feel. On one hand, she was shocked how could Andrew have kept such a big secret from her? But on the other hand, she understood why he had done it. He had always been so down to earth, so genuine, and it made sense that he didn't want his wealth to define their relationship. As Claire stood there, absorbing the weight of Andrew's confession, there was a soft knock at the door. She turned to look at Andrew, her curiosity piqued. Andrew walked over and opened the door, and what he saw made Claire's heart stop. Standing in the doorway was a man dressed in a sharp suit, holding a set of keys. Behind him, parked in the driveway, was a car, a luxury car unlike anything Claire had ever seen. "Mrs. Claire Pierce?" the man asked, his voice polite but formal. "This is for you." Claire stood frozen, her mind still reeling from Andrew's revelation. The man handed her the keys, and as she looked out the door at the car, her breath caught in her throat. It was a Rolls-Royce, sleek, shiny, and breathtakingly beautiful. Andrew stepped beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I wanted to show you that I appreciate you, Claire. That I value you more than anything. And I want the world to know that." Claire stood there, stunned, as the weight of everything that had just happened settled over her. It wasn't just about the car. It was about understanding who Andrew truly was and the life they could now build together. A life that was no longer just simple but full of possibility. "Nothing that works for me." Claire arrived home feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. It wasn't the first time she had been underestimated or judged by someone who didn't know her, but this incident at the car dealership stung more than usual. She had walked in with the simple hope of buying a car that would help her with everyday tasks, but instead, she had been dismissed as someone unworthy of attention. The way Mike had treated her, his condescending tone and assumption that she wasn't serious, had left a bitter taste in her mouth. As she entered the front door of their cozy home, Claire's thoughts began to settle. She took off her shoes, placed her bag on the table, and walked into the kitchen. Andrew, her husband, was there, preparing dinner. He had always been the quiet type, someone who preferred a calm, simple life. His calm presence had always been a comfort to Claire, especially during moments when she needed someone to talk to. "How was your day, love?" Andrew asked without looking up from the stove. Claire hesitated, unsure of how to explain what had happened. She didn't want to worry him, but at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be said. "It was fine," Claire replied, her voice soft. "I went to the car dealership, but I don't know, it didn't go as expected." Andrew raised an eyebrow, finally turning his attention to her. "What do you mean?" Claire sighed and explained the situation, the way Mike had treated her at the dealership, assuming she couldn't afford anything, and how he had asked her to leave as if her presence was a waste of time. "I just don't understand why people think they can judge you based on your appearance. I didn't even ask for anything extravagant. I just wanted something practical, you know. Andrew listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Claire could always count on him to let her vent without interrupting, something she appreciated more than words could express. After a long pause, Andrew finally spoke. People sometimes make assumptions about others, Claire, he said, his voice steady and comforting. But they don't know you, and they don't know me either. Claire turned to him, a puzzled look on her face. What do you mean? Andrew placed the spoon he had been holding on the counter and walked over to where Claire was standing. He gently took her hand in his grip reassuring. I've always preferred to keep things simple, Claire. You know that. But there's more to me than meets the eye. Maybe one day you'll understand. Claire blinked in confusion, unsure of what he was hinting at. She knew Andrew well. He was kind, humble, and deeply private. He had always kept his wealth and success hidden, preferring a life without attention or show. But there were moments when she wondered just how much he kept to himself. He wasn't someone who flaunted his success, and sometimes, that made her curious about the things he might not be sharing. Why don't you want people to know about you? Claire asked softly. Andrew smiled, a warm, gentle smile that only made her more curious. It's not that I don't want them to know. It's just that I don't think it matters. What matters is who we are inside, not what others think or what they see. Claire nodded, still processing his words. She didn't know what to make of it, but she trusted him completely. She had always admired his ability to stay grounded, no matter the circumstances. The thought that he might be hiding something from her felt strange, but she didn't press him for answers. Instead, she let the conversation flow in another direction. After a few more moments of silence, Andrew broke the quiet. I think you deserve to be treated better than that, Claire. No one should ever make you feel less than you are. Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had always known that Andrew saw her as equal, even in the face of challenges. But now, hearing him speak so firmly made her realize just how much he cared. The evening passed with the comforting sounds of their home, the soft hum of the stove, the clink of dishes, and the quiet rhythm of their life together. But as Claire sat down to dinner with Andrew, a part of her couldn't shake the memory of the car dealership. The dismissal, the judgment, it had all been so unnecessary. She tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the food and the simple pleasure of being with Andrew. Later that night, as they settled into their quiet routine, Claire couldn't stop thinking about what Andrew had said. He had spoken so confidently, so calmly, about his beliefs, and she realized just how much she had come to rely on his steady presence in her life. But there was still something that lingered in her mind: Andrew's cryptic words about being more than what people saw. She had always known him as a private man, someone who didn't want the spotlight. But could it be that there was more to him than she had ever imagined? The idea seemed so foreign to Claire. After all, their life together had been so simple, so straightforward. They had built a life based on love, trust, and understanding, not on money or status. But deep down, Claire also knew that Andrew wasn't someone who liked to boast or show off. Maybe there was more to his quiet nature than she had ever realized. She didn't want to pry, but her curiosity was piqued. What had he meant by his comment? Was he suggesting that there was a side of him she didn't know? As Claire lay in bed that night, her mind raced with questions. But she also felt a strange sense of peace. She trusted Andrew completely, and whatever he was keeping hidden, it didn't change the fact that he was the man she loved. But the next morning, everything was about to change. Mike's smile faded slightly, but he nodded and led her to one of the mid-range cars. He clearly wasn't impressed by her request. This one here is a great choice. It's stylish, efficient, and has all the modern features. It's also one of our most popular models. Claire wasn't interested in the bells and whistles. She wasn't after anything flashy. She politely asked to see a car that was more modest. I was hoping to see a used model, maybe something that's a bit older and more affordable. Mike's patience was beginning to wear thin. He had worked on commission, and he knew the bigger the sale, the more he would earn. He didn't think Claire would make much of a purchase, and the thought of dealing with her was starting to frustrate him. He didn't show it, but it was clear in his tone and gestures. "We don't usually have much of a selection for used cars," Mike said, giving Claire an almost dismissive look. "But we have plenty of brand new models to choose from. You'll want to get something new, I'm sure." Claire didn't want to argue. She was just trying to buy a car that would meet her needs, not something extravagant. "I don't need anything new," she said. "Just something reliable." Mike's attitude shifted. The way he looked at her now was full of judgment. He was starting to think she wasn't really serious about buying a car, or maybe she couldn't afford one at all. His tone became sharper, almost condescending. "Well, if you're just looking for a reliable car, I'm sure you'll find something in a used lot, but you're wasting your time here." Claire paused, feeling the sting of his words. She was taken aback by his sudden change in demeanor. She had expected the process to be professional and respectful, but now, it felt like she was being judged for something she couldn't control: her appearance, her modest lifestyle, or maybe even her gender. Trying to hold her composure, Claire took a deep breath. She didn't want to make a scene, but she also didn't want to be treated this way. "I don't think you understand," Claire said quietly. "I just need a car, something simple. I'm not looking to impress anyone. Just something to get me from point A to point B." Mike, still dismissive, sighed and looked at her with clear impatience. "If you're not serious about buying, maybe it's better if you leave. We don't have time for window shoppers." Claire's face flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't let the anger take over. She had never been one to raise her voice, but his words cut deeper than she had expected. She quietly turned on her heel and walked out of the dealership, the door chiming softly as it closed behind her. She could feel her hands trembling slightly, but she held herself together. She had walked into that dealership hoping to make a simple purchase, but instead, she had felt humiliated. It wasn't the first time she had been judged based on appearances, but it still stung each time. Claire didn't care about wealth or luxury, but the judgment she faced felt unfair. As she stepped out into the parking lot, the cool breeze seemed to calm her nerves. She thought about turning back, asking to speak with someone else, or even confronting Mike. But she didn't. Instead, she got into her old, reliable car, which had been with her for years, and drove away. The world around her seemed to fade as she focused on the road ahead. Though the incident had shaken her, Claire was determined not to let it define her day. She had always lived by her values, and no amount of judgment would change who she was. She wasn't going to let the actions of one rude salesman ruin her life or her confidence. It was just another reminder of the unfairness that sometimes existed in the world, and how people often made assumptions based on what they saw on the outside. As she drove home, Claire let the familiar landscape soothe her thoughts. She thought about Andrew, her husband. He was kind and humble, someone who shared her belief that the little things in life were the most important. He didn't care about fancy cars, luxury homes, or being seen as someone special. He cared about the love they shared and the life they were building together. And so, Claire drove on, her mind focused on the peaceful life they had carved out together, never dreaming that the very thing she had been treated poorly for, her desire for something simple, was about to change in a way she could never have imagined.